Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 262 with Ken Reed of TapRooT.
Hi,
Ken,
David. Nice to meet you.
thank you, Ken. Thank you. I want to thank you for being a guest, and this will also serve my selfish needs too, and not just helping out the audience, but my selfish needs into. I think I learned a lot about doing accidents in the past and root cause analysis and kind of peeling back that onion. And I want to see if I still have that really good, valid knowledge since I really haven't used it much. And I really try to stay on the proactive side. But we also know that when something happens, you want to get in there, investigate. It's bad enough something happened the first time. Let's not have something happen, a second or third time, which everybody wink, wink says, oh, that could never happen again. I
Right.
don't really see a need to go back and change things.
Exactly right. Yeah, we see that quite often, that kind of thinking. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. And even I myself once thought, like, God, am I really going to go back and investigate this because it was a driver that had an accident on the road? So
Hmm.
I'm kind of like, well, the cop said it wasn't his fault and everything else. I'm kind of like, but God, is there still something that we can do as a company, something that we can go back on? You
And
know,
that's I think that's kind of a great point is the purpose of your investigations is, hey, not only, obviously we don't want it to happen again, but what can we as a company do to help out with this? And it may seem like a traffic accident is a great example of, yeah, nothing I can do about that. But man, if you sit down and ask some good questions and go through an actual investigation process, you may find some things that you as a company can improve on the next time. So absolutely, I think that's a great observation. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, I think there's always something to work on out there.
Mhm.
But at times we have to almost convince others that it's really worth the time and effort. Um, because naturally I think most people, not that they don't like change, but they have to see the value in it first because they've been doing the same thing for X years. Now
Yep.
that we've had an accident, well, wait a minute, how could I be doing it wrong?
Right, right. I mean, we've been doing it this way forever, and it must have been okay up until now, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And I was sitting down looking at a couple of the older things I had, the SOPs and all that, and we talked about a accident investigation kit to kind of have something. Is there something that you guys would really recommend just to kind of help folks get started to have something to spring into action, not have an accident and say, well, now I got to go gather up all this stuff.
Right, right. Yeah, we during our courses we talk a little bit about our accident investigation kit, and it's something that when something bad happens, you don't want to be looking all over for stuff to try to get together, right?
Right,
So
right.
you want to go to the door, pick up your bag, and go. And yeah, there's quite a few things that you can put in there. It really nowadays is a lot of electronic now, so you don't need as much a huge notebook to take all these notes. A lot of it's all electronic on a laptop, but for some people, you want to have things like an initial interview sheet. What are the standard questions that I want to make sure I ask immediately when I first get to the scene and when I first talk to the person? So, an initial interview sheet is a good thing to have in your kit. Um, we used to talk about having a camera there. I think everybody just pulls their cell phone out and has their camera. So you probably don't have to worry about a separate digital camera. But if you need really high quality photos or maybe long distance, you may need a camera with a different lens on it. So things to think about where you may want to have a separate camera than just your cell phone. Cell phones are pretty good nowadays, though. So
Right,
that's
right.
yeah. In our system, we teach TapRooT, so we have some of our TapRooT materials that you would want to have in that investigation kit. So whatever system you're using, if you have specific documents or tools that are required directly from the system you're using, you would want to have those available to you also. And we also have a checklist of things to make sure that you're not forgetting. So, for example, have we notified everybody of this? Has law enforcement been notified if required for particular investigations? Has legal been informed of this problem? So, a checklist of your immediate kind of actions of things that you'll need to get in place that you don't want to forget about right off the top. Um, and just because you don't want to be thinking about these things when you first get to the scene, it can be chaotic if you're really early there. And if it's a few days later, it's things that should have already happened, but you're not sure. So it's just things to check on to make sure it got done.
Right, right, right. Well, I am a really big fan of checklist. I really like to sit down and say, okay, I've kind of done the following things, and I do have a NA since not everything is really going to apply, of course, obviously in every single scenario.
Sure.
Um, Before that we go on, if I could go back and think about the boomer days, so when
Mhm.
I went through accident investigation course, it was probably right when cell phones were coming out. They had
Mhm.
the flip phone, and then at one point they put a camera on the flip phone,
Maybe, yeah.
and they right. And they would always tell us that you can't take a picture with the flip phone or that kind of like device because it can be altered. How do you go back and prove that it was actually film and not altered? Is
Right.
that actually valid thinking still out there?
It's a really good question. I honestly don't worry too much about that. If I'm concerned that somebody's going to be doing some alterations to a video, I mean, we have AI doing all kinds of stuff nowadays. That's just not in my concerns anymore. If somebody's going to do it, they're going to do it. I think that's the 1%. That's the edge case. In
Right,
general, having the video and the pictures is the way to go. It's more ground truth than any other method I think that you're going to use.
right, right.
The only thing I do recommend you're careful of is don't forget that when you're doing a video, there's also audio with that. So don't forget that
Ah,
while you're doing a video, you don't want to be saying that, boy, that was really dumb, or you don't want to be saying things because those are now recorded things that can the legal teams can pull that stuff in. So not that you're trying to hide stuff, but you want to make sure you're thinking through what you're taking a picture of and what you're saying. And the audio on that video can be an issue, so just be careful with that.
right, right, right. And I think as safety professionals, we don't want to place blame or judgment. We want to show up, we want to get the facts, we want to make sure things are better, never happens again. And I
Exactly.
think we also want to share with other sister plants and organizations because there's a lot of times that I found, at least if you're operating the same way at one spot, you could be operating the same way at another spot too. So I
That's
think
right.
that all of us could do including myself, of course, do a much better job of sharing these lessons learned out there.
I agree. We call it generic cause analysis, where you're looking at, hey, we had a problem here, but could this be at any place else in our business? And yeah, it's a great way to share. I liked, in general, videos and pictures, I think are a good way to convey what you're trying to discuss. And if you're just trying to describe something in words, the person hearing the words is going to interpret those words into their own mental picture. But if you give them a picture, the interpretation kind of goes away, or at least is minimized. So
Oh, I
picture and
like
video.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
That
So
is that is really good. I'm going to do everything I can do now to steal that and use that. Thank you, Ken.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very good. Very, very good. But I'd like to talk about root cause analysis. Um, I'm really anal, so I have a hard time stopping the root cause because
Right,
for me, I'm like, well, I want to like really make sure, like let's dig down to the bottom. It's not about placing blame, of course,
right, right, right.
But
Right.
is there something that you kind of tell folks at some point you have to stop asking why or have to stop doing a root cause?
Yeah, that's a great question. This will lead back more to what system are you using for your investigation? So
Mhm.
I don't mind talking about five whys. We don't use
Oh,
five whys much, but
uh-huh.
that's an example of that. So
Right.
so when you do an investigation process that uses a five why type thinking, you have to kind of keep in your mind uh, what questions am I going to ask? And there's some limitations to like a five why kind of investigation process. And for example, if I'm a training guy and I'm asking five whys about an investigation, I'm probably going to end up with a lot of training root causes and training corrective action,
Ah,
right? Because that's what I'm comfortable with. So my mind just goes in those directions. And five whys and fishbones and learning teams don't have a lot of guidance on the direction to go. So they kind of leave it open to the investigator. Which direction do you want to go? And you just naturally, as a human, go where you're comfortable. So if you're a training guy, you'll go to training stuff. If you're a procedure writing kind of guy and like checklists, you're going to go ask about the checklists, right? What kind of checklist did they have for this? So I think the first step to make sure that you're going to the right level is make sure that your investigation system gives enough guidance to help make sure you're not forgetting anything. Am I going, did I ask about training, but did I also ask about control panel setup and did I also ask about supervision and what the supervisors were doing? So your system really needs to make sure it's guiding you as the investigator to the right areas to make sure you're not missing anything. Um, you also, what I usually find is I don't find too many people going too deep. I usually find them not going deep enough. And
Hmm.
they stop at what we consider to be the causal factor level. So if somebody doesn't push the right button, the root cause that's found sometimes is human error. The guy failed to push the right button. But your system should force you to get beyond that. That's a mistake. I don't think I've ever done an investigation where there wasn't some kind of an error made. I mean,
Right.
humans make errors. That's what we do because we're humans. So just stopping it, the guy made a mistake, corrective action, counseled the guy on the importance of not making that mistake in the future is probably not going to be a very effective direction to go. So your system needs to dig deep enough to make sure you're understanding the human reasons. What allowed this guy or convinced this guy to push that button? You know, why did our system allow this person to push the wrong button? And what convinced him that this button was the right one and not this button over here? These are the
Hmm.
human performance problems that you need to dig down deep into. And five whys may dig into the training side if you're a training guy, but they may not get to the control panel side of why the panel was set up the way it was and allowed him to push the wrong button. So I usually find the systems don't dig too far. I usually find they don't dig far enough is
Ah.
my experience. So I don't know if that's helpful, but
Hmm. I really like the way that you kind of focused in on if you're a training guy, you focus on training, and of course I'm a safety guy, so I'm going to focus on the safety. But I think I really need to expand my thinking, of course, in this whole
right,
thing, and really look at it from a much more human performance
right.
standpoint as well. So, do you bring in others to the investigation into the team?
Yeah, it really depends on the complexity of the investigation.
Hmm.
The more complex, probably the more expert kind of people you're going to need to help explain it. I did an investigation several years ago on a crane accident where somebody pulled the boom off a crane. They were pulling sideways and pulled the boom off it. And I'll admit I am not a crane expert. I've never operated a crane. So I'm going to have a crane guy come in and say, hey, can you tell me how this was supposed to go and what problems do you see here and what actually happened?
Hmm.
But my caveat with that is always be careful that uh, the guy you're talking to is he is probably a crane expert, but he still may not be telling you how it's supposed to be done. He's telling you
Ah,
he always do it. And
ah.
that may not match what your policies and procedures say. It's just how we're used to doing things nowadays. So I always have a little bit of caution anytime you're doing crane investigations or some kind of system expert type investigations.
Mhm.
Just keep that in mind that he's a human too, and he's going to give his perspective on the right way to do something. So
Right, right, right.
keep that in mind. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
So I kind of ran into that same thing a couple of years back. Well, actually, probably more like 20 years or 25 years, where I saw where a couple of policies didn't match what we were doing.
Mm.
And of course, I was very young and arrogant. So of course I thought I knew everything, but what I didn't do is get input from the folks doing it. And
Right.
that really helped me to go back and say, well, how can it be done safely as opposed to me who doesn't know anything about cranes, but I've read about cranes and now I've decided it's going to be done this way, and I write a policy and procedure that means nothing, of course.
Right.
So,
Right, right. I mean, there's all kinds of legal requirements and industry best practices and standards that are out there, and when you're talking to an expert, that's all combined in his head. You know, he puts all that together and comes out with how it should be done. And in many cases, that's great, but you still got to take that with a grain of salt, or at least a little bit of questioning attitude, as
oh,
opposed right? And make sure that what he's telling you is correct and that it makes sense. So
yes, yes, yes. So not to deviate too much from the topic, but I ran into a supervisor at another safety plant before, another safety company,
mhm.
and he was convinced that if he brought in folks, that there could be a little bit of a cover up because everybody's friends and they're a little bit worried about, well, gosh, if I start pointing out stuff that he did wrong, people
Right.
will start pointing out stuff that I did wrong, you know?
Right, right. Well, I find, first of all, when I do interviews, I highly recommend the interviews are done individually. They're not
Hmm.
done as a group. Um, for several reasons. I mean, I, sometimes there's purposeful cover-ups that
Hmm.
can happen, but sometimes it's inadvertent. You know, when if I'm involved in the process and my boss over here says something, well, this is what happened in my mind, I might be thinking, well, I don't know if I remember that, but if he says that's what happened, I guess that's what happened. And now in my mind, I can actually picture what he just said happening, and that's not what happened. So you can contaminate the evidence, especially human-based evidence, interview type stuff, by having a group of people together, even if they're not doing it on purpose. So
Oh,
that's
yes.
a different issue. But even if they're trying to give you the right answers, it's very easy to contaminate that data uh, by having by having other people talking about it. And it's just because we're humans, that's what we do.
Right, 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 right. Do you bring in other operators to help you out too as part of the group?
Yeah, we can. We for our evidence collection piece, we use what we call a snap chart, which is a visual method of gathering data and displaying it.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
during that piece, you'll interview the people involved,
Hmm.
but you'll also probably interview people who are familiar with the evolution of how it normally operates and how we normally do it. You'll bring in maybe management and say, hey, how do you expect your team to do this task? And you'll have them give their input. And all of this goes into what we call our snap chart, a big a big visual timeline of the incident. That allows you to see where your holes are, who else you need to go talk to, because maybe a piece of data came in that you're not sure about, and
Hmm.
it opens up a new area of inquiry that you're going to have to now pull somebody else in and ask about what happened over here. And so, yeah, having uh, there's probably others you're going to pull in besides just the people directly involved in the incident. Yeah, that's pretty,
Oh.
yeah.
Hmm. 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 Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. Um, I was thinking also about, I see, we covered the toolkit already. Could you kind of cover a couple things that you would have in a toolkit that you guys would recommend to kind of get folks started on this whole thing?
Yeah, I think that I had kind of mentioned this, but to be clear, I think an initial uh, interview sheet and
Hmm.
checklist I think is
Right.
really important because
Hmm.
all of us what I like to do when I first get to a scene is hand out, especially if I get there very quickly. So if I'm
Hmm.
there very quickly,
Hmm.
it's really good to give each person involved, hey, here's a data sheet. Can you just fill this out real quick?
Oh,
What
very
what
good.
time did you come to work today? What I'm trying to think of everything that's on that sheet, but it's got
Hmm.
what time did you come to work? What tools were you using at the time? What was the weather like? Just very quickly
Hmm.
gather that before they forget about it or before they contaminate their data. Uh,
Oh, yes,
you
yes.
you get that. So we have like a pad that we recommend that you have in there that you can quickly just hand out to everybody before you even interview them. That
Hmm.
gets your initial thoughts down before they forget. Um,
I really like I really like that aspect.
yeah.
I think that just being kind of anal, I was very focused on I give one sheet to one person and
Mhm.
I'm working with the one person. Now I'm ready to go on to the next. And
Yeah.
maybe I'm gathering a list of names, but that's not quite the same thing as writing it down
Yeah.
like right
Yeah.
away.
It is nice. I mean, I definitely you'll have in your mind who is the, I don't want to say the most important, but the most relevant data that you need is probably the guy pushing the buttons, right? So
Right.
I do need him probably first, but there's nothing wrong with getting, the people around him also giving you some information while you're focusing maybe. So
Right, right, right. Let's talk about a little scenario. Let's say that we're back to we're at a plant and we're making some widgets, and
okay,
let's just say that we have a accident and the person has to go to the hospital.
okay.
At what point do you kind of figure out when you can talk to that person? Because you obviously can't talk to them like right away.
Yeah,
What
that's
do
a
you
great
think?
question. I actually was involved with an investigation where the guy lopped off the end of his finger
Oh, wow.
during a construction site. Yeah, he had a
Oof.
hand injury, and so he was
Mhm.
obviously at the hospital. They were able to reattach it, so it was cool. I guess. I guess
Right,
that's good. I guess.
right,
Um,
right,
but that came up, right? When can I talk to this guy? I mean, I need that data, right? He's the guy that I really need this data from.
Mhm.
So HR was involved. So that
Mhm.
was probably, when can I talk to this guy? And they were kind of the go-betweens a little bit here to help me out with that. It ended up that I wasn't able to actually interview him at the hospital.
Mhm.
And this is before we got into all this Zoom and Teams and all this
Yeah,
stuff. So this
right,
was just I ended up doing a phone interview with him,
right, right, right.
just on the
Okay.
phone. And that was the next day. So
Mhm.
we were able to do it pretty quickly.
Mhm.
But that's an option. You may have to do a phone interview instead of actually face to face. It's not my ideal. I would much rather be face to face so I can see body language and
Ah,
you
yeah.
can get a better rapport going with the person so they feel more comfortable with you. Um,
Mhm.
uh, but if you just can't do that, phone's the next one. I would rather do this kind of an interview with a Teams or a Zoom type thing where I can see body language
Right,
and they can see my face and they can get comfortable talking to a person as opposed to somebody buzzing on a phone. So if you're my the ideal is in person. If you just can't do that, I would rather not wait 3 weeks and do the interview. I'd still rather do it right away. And a Zoom or Teams is now it's a nice technology for that. Yeah.
right. Oh, very good, very good. I think that's something that I had not really thought about. I had thought about that I have to talk to the person in well, actually person to person and all that. I probably had not thought about doing a Teams or Zoom.
Yeah.
Um, phone
Ideal
I
is
had
person to
thought of.
person. That's the ideal. You would rather do it in person, but I don't want to wait 3 weeks because I'm probably going to lose data if I do that. So
Right, 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 right. And many times companies are very focused on we have to solve this too.
I,
I haven't had a company yet that was like, oh, there's an accident. Why don't you take your time? Kind of figure it out in the next couple of months.
yeah,
We'll do
just
what
get
we
back to me when
can.
you're ready, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't see that happen too often.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So,
yeah.
hey, it looks like we're bumping up on time. If you
Okay.
could let the folks know how to go out, find you, connect, and all that good stuff. So, I have a lot of things to talk about. So, hopefully, this was a positive experience. We can have you back again. There's no way that I could cover everything in my own self-serving way of knowing about root cause analysis.
Right. Yeah. Well, absolutely. So again, my name is Ken Reed. I'm a vice president here at System Improvements. We're the developers of the TapRooT system. You can find me. My email is real easy. It's ken@taproot.com or reed@taproot.com. Either works.
Mhm.
I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to, you can go to LinkedIn and pretty easily find me there if you'd like to contact me. And yeah, I always enjoy these kinds of discussions. You're more than welcome to contact me and ask questions. And these are always fun for me. Yeah.
Perfect, Ken. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to having you back.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead there and wrap it up. That was Ken Reed of Taproot. Thank you for joining me and have a safe day.